Hello and welcome back to another review on my channel. Today I'm going to do a 2-in-1 review. It's going to be the Frankenskull mechanical Squonk mod review and also the SXK Hadaly clone. So 2 clones, 2-in-1 review. Let's do it. Alright guys, so here's what we're going to be taking a look at today. The Frankenskull mechanical Squonk mod clone and the Hadaly SXK clone. So there are many different versions of the Frankenskull clone, and I do recommend that you use the link in the description box below and check the reviews, because there are new clones coming in all the time. I will explain in a while the variations or the differences between the older clones and the newer ones, and also some variations between the newer clones themselves, so that you know what to look out for. But always read the reviews, because I got this locally, so although I will link you to a site where you can get it, but I cannot be sure that it's the exact one that I have, because it's such a simple device, and the only difference sometimes that I can see between the clones is the colors. So the Frankenskull clone mod, it comes with an RDA as well, and if you get it with an RDA, that will cost you around 18 bucks or 19 bucks. Now if you get it without the RDA, it's going to cost you about 15 bucks only for just the mod. The SXK Hadaly clone, this one I will also put a link in the description box below to the exact clone, and this one I'm pretty sure that is the exact one I'm going to show you here, and it's a really good quality clone of the authentic Hadaly, which I do happen to have, by the way. So the SXK Hadaly clone, it's really good quality, and it vapes just like the authentic with a few minor differences. The Frankenskull clone mod comes in a box like this, right? Simple, and you'll see a space here cut out here for the RDA. So if you got it with the RDA as a kit, that's where it will be. For my box, it was just empty. Nothing else in this box, no spares, nothing, except on the outside you can see a color indication. And I think it's pretty similar to the authentic, but again, I don't have the authentic. That's because the authentic Frankenskull mod is very hard for you to actually get access to it. Now, if you do happen to find it in a second-hand used vape market, it's going to cost you between 400 bucks to 800 bucks. Depends on the version and depends on the color, depends on the accessories. So one reason a simple, basic, bare device like this can cost or can fetch a price of up to 800 bucks is because it's highly customizable. You can change the buttons to a gold, diamond button, whatever you want. You can change the front door and a few other customizations that you can make in the authentic. But if you take a look at the authentic, it looks exactly like the clone that I'm going to show you. The SXK Hadaly comes in a box like this. Most SXK clones come in exact same packaging nowadays. Inside you will find some spare O-rings, screws. But the most important thing is this Squonk pin, which is in the clone right now. So this is the gold-plated 510 center pin that it came with. So you have to take this out and put this Squonk pin in. And part of the reason I'm doing this 2-in-1 review is because I don't think the included RDA in the clone, at least, is even worth getting at all. You get a much better vape and a much better experience if you actually get the Hadaly clone. So let's start off by talking about the Frankenskull mod itself. So it's a polycarbonate box. It looks 3D printed to me. Initially I thought it was 3D printed, but it's apparently injection molded. But it's basically just a plastic box. And it's really, really tiny. If you compare it to an iStick Pico, you can see that at the highest point of the iStick Pico, the battery cover is about that height. And the width as well is about the same as the iStick Pico. This is the main door here that holds your Squonk bottle and also your battery. And surprise, surprise, look at how basic, how bare and simple it is. 2017, I never expected to see something so basic. And I never expected something so basic to be able to fetch a price of like $400, $500. Anyway, like all Squonk mods, you have your Squonk bottle here. And then right here you have your battery connection. This is how your battery will make a connection. So you have an indication here, negative and positive. You put your battery in, and it would not make a connection until you press the button. So when you press the button, you can see, okay, this thing moves and makes contact, and then that will complete the circuit, and that's how it works. Alright, do excuse the noise because started to rain all of a sudden. Out of nowhere, it just started to rain. So yeah, as I was saying, you can take this part out, and then you can actually remove the button itself. So your juice would go in through here, from the bottle, going through here, and out of the 510 port into the RDA itself. So this is the squonking pin of the Hadaly RDA. You see 3 magnets here, and these magnets actually latch on to the battery itself. It is so simple, and that may turn you off. I mean, for 500 bucks, most definitely I would have a hard time convincing myself that something like this would be worth 500 bucks. Even if the authentic was twice as good as this, still not 500 bucks. But some people think that that's actually better because they can paint it, they can do whatever they want with it very easily. They can swap the parts out. If it's squonk bottle, put a squonk bottle in. Now, because of the position of the 510 itself, you will see that your tube here gets inserted at an angle. See what I mean, right? So it's at an angle. Now that should not be an issue. It's not an issue in this clone. I don't know if it's an issue in other clones. But I noticed that the authentic has slightly thicker 510. The part where the juice goes in, that's a bit slightly thicker. The buttons are of course better made in the authentic as well. And now you got to get your 18650 battery and put it in. But you notice there's no ribbon right here. So you have to be very careful when you put your battery in, because this part right here, it can end up cutting through your battery wraps. Okay, like this one is not so bad, but if I weren't more careful, I'm pretty sure it'd start to tear out. So the problem here is not enough space. What you have to do is slowly put the negative part in, push it upwards a little bit, and try to put it snug, just like that. So now you cannot remove the battery, right? But as I said, you can put your own ribbon in, so it's easy for you to pull out. But you can also do this, just remove the squonk bottle, and then it becomes much easier for you to grab a hold of your battery. But again, this thing ends up damaging your battery wraps. I don't think there's much you can do about it, and that's one of the biggest cons of this thing right here. It doesn't matter how I put the battery in, I can be as careful as I can, but it will end up eventually tearing the battery wrap. Put the ball in, push it up, close the door, and that's basically it. So just the squonk window here is pretty big. You can get your thumb in and just squonk. Now, unlike other squonk mods I've shown you, there is absolutely no room for the bottle to move, right? See what I mean? Absolutely no room for the bottle to move. So, as I said, earlier clones had some issues that this clone does not have, and hopefully going forward, there will be even better clones coming out for the Frankenskull. So if you decide to get one, let me explain the differences, right? The main difference with the older clones is that the squonk bottle was way too soft, and people had problems with it because you can keep pushing it and pushing it in. The juice just does not go up. And older versions also did not have an adjustable 510. This thing is adjustable, so you can put your screwdriver in and screw it upwards. This is screwed all the way to the bottom, and that works out pretty well for the Hadaly. But for other RDAs, you may need to adjust it to bring it up a little. Older clones also had lots of wobble in the battery door. This one has a little bit on both sides here. But the magnets inside are now stuck to the battery. And also the differences between the clones is the amount of L. There you can see. So Frankenskull, 2 L's, right? Mine has got it right on the side, but the front it says Frankenskull without another L. So that's what you should look out for. Look at the pictures or clarify if it has one L or two L's. You can buy two different color Frankenskull mods and swap the battery doors. Right, now let's talk about the Hadaly SXK clone itself. So this is how it looks like on the inside, and the build quality on this is really good. No machine oil whatsoever when I received it, and it's actually pretty similar, almost one-to-one to the authentic Hadaly. Only a few issues here. You can see that the insulator is slightly lifted. I don't know if this is how it was or this happened after I put a bill in it. It's slightly lifted. For the authentic is much cleaner, and the color of the insulator is also a bit different in the SXK version. But if you look at the top cap, almost identical. The distance between the airflow identical. The width of the airflow also identical. Drip tip also pretty much identical to the authentic. So identical in fact that I have to keep them separately so that I don't mix them up. But when you look at the build deck, there are a few differences between with the clone in terms of the post screws themselves. So here is the authentic. You can see the SXK version looks to be gold plated. Here's the bottom part of the SXK Hadaly clone and the bottom of the authentic clone. So SXK has made the engraving just that much deeper. The fonts are also different. They're actually very similar, but if you look closely, not exactly the same. Especially the D here, as what I can see, the authentic, the D actually looks like a D. The letter D on the SXK clone, the D looks like an O. But then I don't know. You really have to look closely to realize that the Squonk pin is actually so-called gold-plated in the SXK version. Side by side, you can check out the differences. Machining is pretty much there. I would say on par with the authentic. The engraving on the top cap for the SXK version of the clone and the authentic is pretty similar as well. But again, the fonts are just slightly different. Let's put it back on the Frankenskull. Right, so now I have my bottle filled up. So it sits pretty much flush with the Frankenskull itself. And now just squeeze to squonk the juice up. Right, the juice bottle squonking action here isn't the best. It does send juice up a little bit, but you have to press harder and you got to keep some pressure on. Right? That's pretty much it. Now, if you have trouble, then what you can do is just remove the bottle, remove the tube, make sure that there's no air trapped in the tube, and then try again. Because of the position of the tube itself, I find that sometimes you can have air bubbles stuck within the tube, and that really makes the squonking that much less effective than it should be. Alright, so I'm going to wig this up, get back to FaceTime and show you how it vapes. Yeah, it works really good. The Frankenskull clone and the SXK Hadaly clone. So it is a 2-in-1 review, but obviously one clone is better than the other. The SXK Hadaly clone, it's perfect, right? It no issues at all. It vapes just fantastic. I have the authentic, as I said, and although the authentic, if you look really closely, it is better quality, a little bit better quality than the SXK version. But like I said, you have to look really closely to see the differences between the SXK clone and the authentic Hadaly RDA. Now, for the Frankenskull clone itself, as I showed you in the close-ups, right, there are many issues with this one, and I think the authentic is pretty much the same as well. The funny thing is, for the high-end mod collectors, they don't mind issues. I mean, I think for them, if a device is too perfect, there's just no value in it. It has to have its own kinks, its own issues, its own things that you need to learn about it. So the main issue here is the position of the Squonk bottle and, you know, the tube that has to go at an angle like that. So that causes certain things, like you may have, if you over drip, it means if you're too aggressive with the bottle and you keep pressing it, obviously you're going to have some juice coming out of the airflow, but also some juice eventually coming out of the tube area here, and that kind of spills over to your battery. You can see my battery, right? You can see the discoloration or the darker color here. That is basically juice that hits on to the battery. That's issue number one. Issue number two is the squonk bottle itself. If you cannot squonk it, then you must remove the tube and sort of like put, I don't know, some kind of tape on the tube so that there is no gap at all where the tube comes out of the bottle. That's one of the things that will help you get a much better squonking action. Now, this time around it seems to work pretty well, right? But if you look closely, you can see some air pockets, air bubbles in the tube. So if you're having issues with your Frankenskull clone, that's one of the things you can do to make this squonking better. And the third issue is that the battery, it's hard to remove the battery unless you remove the bottle or if you put your own ribbon. And the fourth issue is the battery wrap gets stripped off, gets damaged pretty easily because of the very, very basic design here, the way it is. You just can't help it. Your battery will be slightly damaged, the wraps at least. But otherwise, this mechanical squonk mod, it works really, really well. Now, it is a mechanical mod. You have to treat it like a mechanical mod. So I have to give the warnings here that you need to learn Ohm's law and stuff like that. And you need to understand the true capacity of your battery, the exact maximum amps that you can put out, and then do a build that matches your battery. I cannot teach you in this video, but safe to say that this is not something a beginner would want to consider, especially if you have no interest in learning Ohm's law whatsoever. But with the right build on it, it actually performs better than my single battery 18650 DNA 75 squonk mod like the HCigar VT inbox, because it's a mechanical mod, so you can really pull as much power as possible from your battery and get a really, really good vape. So there you go, guys. The Frankenskull clone and the Hadaly SXK clone. The Hadaly SXK clone is definitely something you want to check out. For the Frankenskull clone, there are issues with it. I don't know if newer clones will make the issues go away or if it's going to be there. But if you decide to get it, then number one, you need to understand how a mechanical mod works. And number two, you need to be able to accept the limitations of this very, very simple mod, the issues that it has, and you must be willing to work around those issues and find your own solutions. If you're not willing to do that, then just don't get it. Okie dokie. No more smoky.
Wow.